Hey everyone, and welcome to Skill Capped. In this guide, we'll be going over the aggressive strategies the player aceu uses to get more kills and top frag in his games on the map Bind in defense. Gaining map control and finding information for your team aggressively early onto the round can net you lots of frags and wins in solo queue. Now, playing aggressively in defense is pretty risky. You need to have the mechanics and be precise with your aim to be able to execute these plays with high succession. Come check out our previous video on aceu, where we break down 3 aiming techniques he uses to allow him to play aggressively, which can hopefully help you do the same. Also, we have analyzed how he's played defense on Haven, so come check that video out too. Keep in mind, playing aggressively on defense requires you to be flexible and adaptive at all times. Aceu always adapts to changes in situations and fills in gaps where his teammates cannot. Luckily, we'll be breaking down different variations of the same play to give you guys a better idea of aceu's thought process and how he is such an amazing solo queue player. Alright, so jumping into our first strategy, aceu actually loves pushing out A short and fight either the right or left side in the cubby. We'll be seeing 3 variations of how he aggressively tackles this area of the map. Now, before we continue the clip, notice how aceu's team is structured. We have 2 players in A and 3 players in B. This defense is heavily leaned towards B side. What normally happens is that the B sided players would aggress a little more on the map due to the numbers advantage. Finding early information on B side will allow for decisions to either early rotate or aggressively push on the A side. Since Bind is a relatively small map with multiple rotation options using the teleporter, pushing areas of the map and finding early information is crucial in defense. The advantage and trick behind pushing this cubby section in short A is that the offensive players on the right side actually can't see you get into it when the barrier goes down. Now be aware, the left side still sees you get into the corner, so be prepared to take that fight if needed. That being said though, aceu breaks the norm and decides to play aggressively on A anyways, regardless of the numbers disadvantage on his side of the map. This is a rather risky play because if aceu were to die, it would leave Cypher alone on the site and would most likely be unable to stall in time for the rotate to happen for the players on the other side of the map. On the other hand though, since aceu does play Jet, he can always just dash away safely if anything were to happen. Let's resume the clip. Before the round starts, aceu's teammate tells him to watch his left and he'll bait for the right.
That's fine, I'll watch your left. I'll bait for you.
This play is ideal because if the enemies were to come, they would be too focused on the Cypher and divert the attention away from the corner aceu is on. It would make the likeliness of them checking the cubby very low. As aceu gets into the cubby, he doesn't hear anything and decides to push. Notice how he is consistently watching the map and seeing what his teammates are doing and checking if any question marks appear that reveal the enemy's position. This is important when pushing aggressively. A lot of people stop looking at the minimap and just blindly push, which causes them to make a poor decision. The Sova arrow reveals 2 people on long B, which gives aceu enough information to confirm it is a B-sided push for the enemy team. Because of that crucial piece of information, aceu decides to hold the left and wait for the enemy players from long to wrap back into hookah. He gets an easy kill and even finds the bomb planter in the process. This in itself is already a huge benefit for the team and allows everybody to play around the bomb drop. Aceu then proceeds to kill the lurker in the shower who was trying to retrieve the bomb and grab a 3k in total that round. Strong way to start off the defensive half. Now onto the next clip. Here's an example of why this cubby is so powerful to get into and how difficult it is to deal with if you ignore or forget about checking it. Before we start the clip though, let's take a quick look on the map. This time, aceu's team is heavily leaned towards the A side. This allows him to be more aggressive and take fights without losing as much comparative to the previous clip. If aceu were to die in this situation, it wouldn't be a total loss in the round because there are still 2 people guarding the site. We can see that the Phoenix is in position ready to flash for aceu if needed. And Sova is also going to arrow and shower to gain early information. Everybody on this side of the map is ready to grab early information, which is the ideal thing to do when stacking a site. Let's resume the clip. Right off the bat, we can see a barely missed flash from the enemy breach followed by lots of footsteps. This allows aceu to pre-aim the right corner and be prepared for the enemies coming out. Notice how he's positioned in a way the left corner doesn't see him. This is the safest spot to take the duel for the people coming from the right side. With the burst of his Vandal, aceu immediately gives an advantage for his team. He tries to smoke himself out, but becomes a target for the breach earthquake to land. Jet is an amazing character at getting out of these sticky situations. Aceu brilliantly uses the dash and gets himself out of this doomed predicament. As the enemies start to collapse into the site, we can see that Phoenix throws out the flash which he was initially positioned for in the beginning of the round. Although it didn't exactly help Aceu, the Phoenix gets a frag on the enemy breach which stops the push onto the A site indefinitely. The kill on the Omen afterwards is just icing on the cake. Without a doubt, this round was carried by Aceu with the initial kill on the enemy Opper and then holding it down with the Phoenix afterwards. Let's review the differences in the two clips we've seen so far. When Aceu does not hear or see any players, he decides to look at the map and attempt to push forward depending on his teammates' information. But when he does hear immediate footsteps, he prepares for the fight in the right corner and dashes out if he's ever put in a bad situation. Remember guys, any 2v1 situation is 99% of the time a bad situation. All the pros are already instinctually avoiding these positions, so you should also do the same. So for the last variation, we have an off angle for a great operator spot that 90% of the time works at least once a game. Before the barrier drops, Aceu starts from heaven and floats to the box next to the truck. This might take some practice because the strafe at the beginning is important for maximum distance. Also, make sure to have your knife out because you do jump further with it. With this technique, you can save an extra 100 credit at the beginning to use on another smoke because updraft was not needed. After you're on top of the truck, float to the right pillar and stand on top to have a killer off angle setup. Unfortunately for the enemy Jet, we can see her pre-aiming towards U-Haul and instantly taken out by surprise by this angle. This strategy makes for a great 4v5 advantage on defense side using the op. After opping in short, a regular pattern Aceu follows is going to showers to mix it up. Since he is up against immortal and above ranked players, they tend to not fall for the same trick twice. Although in this round he does not get any initial kills, but in the next clip we see Aceu getting a successful kill even with two enemies pushing into showers. The Killjoy Nanoswarm was easily evaded due to Jet's ability to escape almost any 2v1 situation. The showers fight in general is mostly a very long range one. Aceu tends to use primarily the operator to fight in this area to reduce any risk of losing in that situation. If you see the minimap, having two people cover short A would allow for enough time to stall and at the same time cover all the angles associated with that area of the map. Holding showers with an operator provides the highest chance of success in winning the fight and gives a heavy presence of control to the A corner of the map. Now let's move on looking into how Aceu deals with defense on B. We'll start with how he plays in hookah, showing two variations of the play. To better understand though, I want to clarify that this area of the map is actually the hardest to push out completely due to the fact that there are many angles to cover and you're kind of in the open if you decide to peek out. Let's start it off by looking at the map again. We see that Aceu's team is stacked towards the B side, which enables him to play aggressively without taking that much risk. Notice how we're in the second round of the game. This is significant because Aceu won the round before, which gives their team a major buy advantage. It is very likely the enemy team would save for the next round, which gives Aceu more confidence in winning these fights. In this clip, we can see that Aceu is steadily pushing out and keeps his crosshair in the market area. As predicted though, we find the enemy Killjoy with a pistol and helpless in front of a Spectre. After the frag, Aceu decides to back up from hookah and rotate back into sight. Why do you guys actually think he made that decision? Why did he decide not to keep on pushing and flank the A players? I'll give you a hint, look at the minimap. If you thought it was because the allied Jet has already pushed into market, then you are correct. Since Aceu has pushed out hookah, Jet has already pushed out short. The Cypher is currently looking at long B and the only possible area the enemy can be is in showers. As Aceu is running back to spawn, the enemy players from shower fall back to shore and overwhelm the Jet to reveal their positions. Because of the opening, the enemy Sova was able to push through A short and onto the site as shown on the minimap. Regardless though, Aceu's team quickly cleans things up and win the round. Now for the other variation of the short push that Aceu does, he peeks out very slowly again, but this time he is met with 3 people staring and waiting. In this situation, it is always best to take a quick fight and run back. Honestly, this is probably what would happen most of the time if you were to peek out Hookah without any utility like what he did. The outcome is never good if you overstay the peak in that situation due to the wall bangs that can potentially be lethal. Again, remember, being in anything more than a 1v1 situation is always bad. Now let's take a look at Long B and some options aceu uses to play this open area. Obviously, he mostly uses the operator in this section of the map. It is the strongest weapon at holding any long range locations, as mentioned before. There are actually two different ways of holding this angle though. The first being holding the top for when the enemy peeks out further away, and the bottom when the enemy peeks close to the wall. If we analyze the mechanics involved in how aceu holds the angle, he seems to prefer aiming a little high to catch the enemies from peeking out further away. Unfortunately, he only lands a shot on Reyna's leg, but this in itself can show how effective holding Long B is with an operator. As you can see, the plays aceu makes all depend on different situations that happen around him. Sometimes you don't need to push all the way to get your team an advantage. It's good to know when you have a good position where you get lots of information, or even better, a couple of frags to help win your team the round. Alright, so let us know in the comments section below which part of the map on Bind you have most success on playing aggressively in. We here at SkillCapped want to thank you for watching, and we'll see you again next time.